welcome back to week 4 of the Upper Intermediate Online English classes. My name is Mr. Nicky. We're going to be carrying on our work from Unit 7 Journeys, which is in your solutions textbook, pages 74 and 75 today. If you don't have your textbooks, again, don't worry. Everything that you need is going to be included in the presentation again. You will, however, need notebooks today. So please make sure you have a notebook and a pen to hand, because I will be asking you to write some things down. This is today's page. The topic is time travel, so I think it should be quite an interesting one. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll find this one interesting. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to speak about time travel, describe the granny paradox and the theory of parallel worlds, and you should have also completed the reading and identified key messages from the passage of text that we're going to look to. Now, there is going to be quite a lot of new vocab today, maybe things that you don't fully understand. It's quite a complex topic. Don't panic if that's the case. You should be able to use context to infer meaning for most of these, but we'll see how we get on. So I've put on screen now a picture of the movie titled Back to the Future. If you've ever seen this movie, it's very, very good. Very famous pair of Nike shoes in it. This is an example of a movie, a sci-fi movie, a science fiction movie that has time travel as one of the central themes. Before we begin, can you think of and brainstorm as many sci-fi, science fiction movies or books as you can? Okay, just take maybe like 1 minute to do that. Brainstorm them in your book. When you restart, I'll pop some of mine on and we'll see if we overlap at all in any of them. Okay, so the ones that I have put on were Back to the Future, A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. If you've not read it, that's a very, very good book. It was written a long time ago, and it's always lauded for having a very sort of accurate representation of what the future or the present time for us now would look like. Star Trek, originally made years and years ago, but they've updated it recently. Bit of a classic, timeless one. War of the Worlds, not strictly dealing with time travel, but a good example of science fiction. And Doctor Who, if you've not heard of this one before, this was a UK BBC show about a doctor from another planet who travels around in a time-traveling police phone box. Very strange, very random, but also very famous. So before we begin, we're going to do some speaking questions just on the topic of time travel. Again, please treat these as if this were a kind of speaking exam, as if we were face to face. So question 1. Do you know any stories or movies in which the characters travel through time? One more time. Do you know any stories or movies in which the characters travel through time? Pause the video now to answer that question, please. Okay, question 2. Do you think it will ever be possible to travel through time? Why or why not? Again, please pause the video to answer that question. Number 3. If you could travel back in time, when and where would you go to and why? If you could travel back in time, when and where would you go to and why? Okay, again, pause the video, please, to give your answer. Okay, and then last question. This leads on to something that we're going to look at a little bit later on. If you could change one thing that happened in the past, what would it be? And what effect do you think this would have on the world that you return to? So if you went back in time and changed something, it's very possible that that would affect the entire future. So what would you change and how would that change modern day life as it is now? Okay, if you were able to answer those questions, very well done. We are going to move on to reading now. Now, as I said, there are going to be quite a few words in this passage that maybe you're unfamiliar with, and it is quite long. I'm going to read it all the way through, and I'm going to go a little bit slower than I normally would to give you time to keep up and also highlight any words that you're not familiar with. If there are any, I'm sure there will be, because I'll be honest, there was at least one word which actually I'd never heard of before in this passage, which was quite strange when I was practicing yesterday. So please make sure you have a highlighter to take note of those. Just over 100 years ago, in 1895, H.G. Wells's classic story, The Time Machine, was first published. As befits the subject matter, that was the -10th anniversary of the first publication in 1905 of Albert Einstein's special theory of relativity. It was Einstein, as every schoolchild knows, who first described time as the fourth dimension. And every schoolchild is wrong. As a matter of fact, it was Wells who wrote in The Time Machine that there is no difference between time and any of the three dimensions of space, except that our consciousness moves along it. Ever since then, writers have been fascinated by time travel, and especially by the paradoxes that seem to confront any genuine time traveler, something that Wells neglected to investigate. The classic example is the so-called granny paradox, where a time traveler inadvertently causes the death of his granny when she was a little girl, so that the traveler's mother, and therefore the traveler himself or herself, were never born, in which case he did not go back in time to kill his relatives, and so on. A less gruesome example was entertainingly provided by the science fiction writer Robert Heinlein in his story By His Bootstraps. The protagonist stumbles across a time travel device brought back to the present by a visitor from the distant future. He steals the device and travels forward in time. He constantly worries about being found by the old man from whom he stole the time machine, until one day, many years later, he realizes that he himself is now the old man, and carefully arranges for his younger self to find and steal the time machine. As these paradoxes show us, the possibility of our being able to travel through time is clearly irrational and runs counter to common sense. The problem is that common sense is not always the most reliable means of assessing scientific theories. To take Einstein's own theory again, it is hardly common sense that objects get both heavier and shorter the faster they move, or that moving clocks run slow. Yet both of these predictions of relativity theory have been borne out of many times in experiments. In fact, when you look closely at the general theory of relativity, the best theory of time and space we have, it turns out that there is nothing in it to rule out the possibility of time travel. The theory implies that time travel may be exceedingly difficult, but not impossible. Perhaps inevitably, it was through science fiction that serious scientists finally convinced themselves that time travel could be made to work by a sufficiently advanced civilization. What happened was this. Carl Sagan, a well-known astronomer, had written a novel in which his characters traveled through a black hole from a point near the Earth to a point near the star Vega. Although he was aware that he was bending the accepted rules of physics, this was, after all, fiction. Nevertheless, as a scientist himself, Sagan wanted the science in his novel to be as accurate as possible. So he asked Kip Thorne, an established expert in gravitational theory, to check it out and advise on how it might be improved. After looking closely at the fictional equations, Thorne realized that such a passage through space-time from one black hole to another, a wormhole, actually could exist within the framework of Einstein's theory. Sagan gratefully accepted Thorne's modification to his fictional Stargate, and the wormhole duly featured in the novel Contact, published in 1985. The Stargate, however, still only acted as a shortcut through space. Scientists soon realized that, theoretically, a wormhole could just as well link two different times as two different places. While it's hard to see how any civilization could build a wormhole time machine from scratch, it is much easier to envisage that a naturally occurring wormhole might be adapted to suit the time-traveling needs of a sufficiently advanced civilization. Sufficiently advanced, that is, to be able to travel through space by conventional means and locate and manipulate black holes. Even then, there's one snag. It seems you can't use a time machine to go back in time to a point before which the time machine was built. You can go anywhere in the future and come back to where you started, but no further, which rather neatly explains why no time travelers from our future have yet visited us, because the time machine still hasn't been invented. So, Where does that leave the paradoxes and common sense? Actually, there is a way out of all the difficulties, but you may not like it. It involves another favorite idea from science fiction, parallel worlds. These are the alternative histories which are envisaged as in some sense lying alongside our version of reality. According to the theory, each of these parallel worlds is just as real as our own, and there is an alternative history for every possible outcome of every decision ever made. Alternative histories branch out from decision points by bifurcating endlessly, like the branches and twigs of an infinite tree. Bizarre though it sounds, this idea is taken seriously by a handful of scientists, and it certainly fixes all the time travel paradoxes. According to the theory of parallel worlds, if you go back in time and prevent your own birth, it doesn't matter, because by that decision, you create a new branch of reality in which you were never born. When you go forward in time, you move up the new branch and find that you never did exist in that reality. But since you were born and built your time machine in the reality next door, there is no paradox. Hard to believe? Certainly. Counter to common sense? Of course. But the plain fact is that all of this bizarre behavior is, at the very least, permitted by the laws of physics, and in some cases required by those laws. I wonder what H.G. Wells would have made of it all. Okay, so I imagine, please go back through that passage now, read it yourself at least one time, highlight any words that you're still not familiar with, go and give them a little search, translate them if necessary, make sure you understand what they mean, and then when you've finished that, you can restart the video and we'll pick up with exercise 2 and 3. Okay, so pause the video now to complete that. Exercise 2 says, read the text. Which sentence best sums up the opinion of the writer? Is it that time travel runs counter to common sense and must therefore be impossible? Is it that time travel may one day be possible because of the laws of science do not rule it out? Or is it, number 3, time travel is impossible because of the inherent paradoxes? Okay, so the correct answer you should have got there was number 2. Time travel may one day be possible because the laws of science do not rule it out. Exercise 3. You had to match the headings 1 to 6 with paragraphs A to F. So if you were going to give them a title, if each paragraph had a title, what would it be? Pause the video now. Try and fill in those boxes next to the letters. When you restart the video, I will give the answers. Okay, so answers to exercise 3. Number 1, the impossibility of time travel should have gone with paragraph B. Number 1, B. Number 2, the heading limitations should have gone with paragraph E, 1E. Number 3, can we trust our common sense? That should have gone with paragraph C, 3C. Number 4, versions of reality. That should have gone with paragraph F, still on screen there. Number 5, a schoolboy error should have gone with paragraph A. And number 6, a writer comes to the aid of scientists, should have gone with paragraph D, 6D. Okay, so again, hopefully you're able to get those. If not, please make the corrections in your books and try and work out why you got those wrong. If you got those correct, let's move on to the next page. Okay, there are 5 sentences on the board. Are these sentences true or false? And in which paragraphs did you find the evidence? Now, I would like you to complete this exercise in your notebooks, please. So write down the sentences as they appear on the board. For example, number 1, most scientists dismiss the idea of different worlds coexisting alongside each other. You're then going to write the letter that corresponds with the paragraph that says that in the text that we covered. And then I'd like you to find one sentence that shows that is evidence for that. Okay? So pause the video now to complete that, please. Okay, answers to number 4. Number 1, most scientists dismiss the idea of different worlds coexisting alongside one another is true. And we would have found a sentence for that somewhere in paragraph F. ideally. Number 2, it won't be possible to travel through time until we are able to find and control black holes. That is also true, and the evidence for that could have been found in paragraph E. Number 3, H.G. Wells demonstrated the problems thrown up by the concept of time travel. This is false. We could have found evidence of this in paragraph B. Number 4, the possibility of taking a shortcut through space led scientists to realize that time travel may theoretically be possible. This is true, and the evidence to support it could have been found in paragraph E. Last one, number 5, Einstein's theories are validated both in scientific experiments and by common sense. This is false, and you could have found the evidence for this in paragraph 6. Okay, if you got those correct, very well done. If you got them incorrect, please listen to the answers again, go back to the paragraph that I just gave you the answer for, and try and find a sentence within that paragraph to make your answers to this correct. If you're all good, we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, little bit of speaking again here, okay? I'm going to ask these verbally. Please give your response verbally as well. Read the second, sixth, and final paragraphs again and explain in your own words for me, please, the granny paradox. You can pause the video to do that now. Number 2, again, read back through those paragraphs. Can you please explain in your own words the theory of parallel worlds? Pause the video one more time. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Okay, these are some of the words that appear in the text that are maybe a little bit tricky or that you may be unfamiliar with. They've got line numbers on them. What I would like you to do is translate these into Vietnamese in your books. What I would like you to do, ideally, if you're not entirely sure of the definition, type the entire sentence into Translate to try and work out what it's going to be. Okay. Sometimes words change meaning ever so slightly depending on the context and what else is around them. So make sure that you don't just translate the individual word, translate the whole sentence and see if you can work out what that word means. Okay. Now, number 7. So in your books, there is a Learn This box, and it's got 5 linkers, okay, things that link ideas within sentences and paragraphs. So the first one we have, I'm going to ask you to write these down and take note of these in your books because they're not going to be on screen. So number 1, write this in your books. As a matter of fact. As a matter of fact, okay, that appears in paragraph A. The next one, number 2, again, please write this in your book. In fact. In fact. And that can be found in paragraph C. Actually can be found in paragraphs D and F. The plain fact is paragraph F. And the last one, to tell the truth. Okay, so make sure you have those written down. One more time. As a matter of fact, in fact, actually, the plain fact is, and to tell the truth. Now, what you need to do is take those linkers and try and decide which one matches with each of the sentences which are on your screen at the moment. So which of those linkers is used to show when admitting something? Which is used to show a contrast between the truth and what the other person believes? Which of those linkers is used for talking about the fact that some people do not accept or may not like to hear? Which is used to give extra details about something? And which is used to add a comment of interest to the other person? Okay, so use the words that you've written down in your notebook and match them with the sentences on the board. Okay, answers for exercise 7 Hopefully you've completed that. Number 1, to tell the truth. Okay, we're admitting something, to tell the truth. Number 2, that was used to show a contrast between the truth and what the other person believes, was actually. Okay, so again, you may think this, but actually, this is the truth. Number 3, used for talking about a fact that some people do not like or do not accept or don't want to hear. We would say the plain fact is. I don't know if anybody heard the other day about President Trump suggesting people to inject disinfectant in them to cure coronavirus. It's incredibly stupid thing to say. For some reason, he thought it was true. People have followed his advice. We would maybe use that to say the plain fact is that does not work. You might not want to hear it, but that does not work. Number 4, used to give extra details about something. In fact. And last one, used to add a comment of interest to the other person as a matter of fact. Okay, so those were all in the text that we looked at earlier. Hopefully you were able to find those and match them there. Now, your writing task this week, again, is going to be set by me, and so it's going to link to what we have done today. I think it could be quite a fun writing piece. I hope it is. And again, when you've completed this, this is to be emailed to your English teacher. So the idea is you're going to create a movie pitch. Now, we're aiming for around about the 300-word mark when you do this. So you may not have heard of a movie pitch before. A movie pitch, when you want to make a movie, you have to go and give your idea to somebody. And when we give your idea to somebody, we say you are pitching it. You go to pitch your idea. Same if you want somebody to invest in a business, you go and tell them the idea. We would call that a business pitch or an investment pitch. Okay, so for a movie pitch, you want to talk about what's going to happen in your movie. So you need to come up with a movie idea and prepare a pitch. First thing that your pitch needs to include is information about the main characters. Now, every story contains at least 4 characters. We will usually have a protagonist, which is another word for the good guy. That appeared in the text earlier, if you want to go back and see that in context. Protagonist, the good guy. We then have the antagonist. Can you guess? Hopefully you got that. The opposite would be the bad guy. Then we have a sidekick, which is somebody who supports the protagonist, maybe a very close friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, something like that. And then lastly, we have a mentor, which is usually somebody a little bit older who has some wisdom or knowledge, which they are able to share with the protagonist to help them in their journey as it happens in the movie or in the book. So your pitch must also explain how your characters, your protagonist, discovers time travel. Was it a deliberate thing? Was it an accidental thing? Was it lucky? Was it planned? You decide. How did they discover time travel? Secondly, where and when do they go to? Do they just go to one place or do they go to multiple places? Again, that's totally up to you. Every story needs a problem. So what problem do your characters face? Do they get stuck somewhere? Does something break? Do they end up in some kind of conflict? Again, completely up to you. What is the problem they encounter? And then the last thing, of course, if we've got a problem, we are going to need a resolution. So how do your characters escape? Or do they? It's not essential for this story to have a happy ending. It's entirely up to you. If you want your characters to die in a storm of blaze of fire, that is absolutely fine. Okay, so one more time. You must include information about the characters: protagonist, antagonist, sidekick, mentor. Put that in your first or second paragraph. Next, talk about how they discovered time travel, a few sentences. Then, where and when they go, a problem they encounter, and how they resolve it. Okay, this does not need to be formal writing. Okay, this is preparing something that usually you would speak to somebody. So it's almost preparing a speech to give. So don't worry about formal language the whole way through. This is a movie pitch. It's allowed to be slightly casual. Okay, these characters, put a few from Harry Potter that I think will maybe help explain these. Who do you think out of those 3 is the protagonist? Okay, the protagonist we said was the good guy, the main character. That would be Harry. Who do you think we would consider a sidekick? The sidekick, we would say, is Hermione. She's a peer. She's the same age. They're friends. They go around. They do everything together. She's his sidekick. So that leaves Dumbledore. Can you guess which one we would class Dumbledore as? Dumbledore would be a mentor. He's older, wiser. He's given them this knowledge which they're going to take and use to try and defeat the antagonist, who is Voldemort. Okay, so Harry, protagonist. Hermione, sidekick. Dumbledore, mentor. And Voldemort would be the antagonist. So hopefully that gives you some reference for the character type. All right, that is where we are going to stop for today. I hope you were able to complete all of the activities in that lesson. I know that the text was maybe a little bit tricky and some of the ideas were quite complicated, but I hope you were able to enjoy it anyway. Good luck with your movie pitch, and I will see you next week. Thank you very much for taking part again.